Because you Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Drinks and Dave show. How are you, David?
What are you laughing about, Dave?
I'm just a happy, jovial individual.
You're drunk.
No, I'm not drunk. I just had the day from Hades, as they say.
Oh man. Well, you do live in Arizona, so
Well, yeah, and especially when the air conditioner at the shop goes out.
that's been happening a lot down there.
Yes, and so today, not to bore our wonderful barflies, please introduce yourself while you're here. The contractor asked me to be there around 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. I said, okay, I'll be there. He doesn't show up till 8:30.
Joke's on you.
Yeah, and then so he spends the whole day putting it. I'm doing a mini split, so inside, outside condenser, conduit line, dot 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 dot, and then he goes, "Oh, I forgot to call the electrician." So now everything's done, but now the electrician has to come and hook everything up. Hey, Rich.
Rich, good to see you, buddy. Beautiful.
And Rich had his chili today.
Hey, Dave.
So that's my that's my day. And those of you barflies that are milling around in the bar, please make a comment. Tell us who you are, what you're doing, and okay.
So,
Yeah, tell them why you're so concerned.
yeah. So, it's not supposed to rain all week long, and I did check that this morning, and then, you're allowed to smoke inside. I can't do that. So, in order to enjoy a cigar during the show, I'm outside on the deck. And because it wasn't supposed to rain, I'm up on the top deck. And just about 10 minutes before showtime, I'm like, kind of smells a little wet in the air. And then there was a little bit of drizzle. And so I'm kind of got my eye out here. I got my towel to throw over my keyboard, and it had stopped. I'm like, okay, we're fine. So I'm just looking out, kind of seeing how much precipitation, because my body's covered, but the camera and the laptop and
So in other
we'll
words, basically, let's see if the barflies can say, okay, if it starts raining and it goes electrical, we'll probably all hear this.
Uh-oh.
Nice little electric sound.
She's my wife is inside watching this whole show going on, like, what the hell? So
Yeah.
so let's just, it'll be entertaining for everybody, but let's just pray that I don't have to scramble while we're live. But so I had a couple follow-ups, though, to our last show, right? We're talking about artificial intelligence.
Oh, here we go. Okay.
Yes. No, I ran into two situations this week where I was thinking about it. One was they really need some artificial intelligence built into this. And the other one was an example of a great one. Okay, so the first one where we need some artificial intelligence is stoplights, right? Because like on the way to your shop at 5 a.m, I don't know if you did, but you could have hit a red light and sat there waiting for the whole thing to cycle through, and you're the only car there, right?
I don't have any stoplights.
You don't have that. All right.
No.
You know what I'm talking about,
Yes,
though, right?
yes.
Where you're looking around and then you're wondering, like, what are the chances that there's a cop behind that building because nobody's around it? I've never done that, but I'm like, why aren't these things smart enough to know no other ways are triggered? Rich, not appreciated. So anyway, so I thought there's an excellent place for some artificial intelligence, right? How much faster could traffic go if it knew?
Well, I think here in Arizona there's sensors. So in other words, if you are coming up to a stoplight and there's nobody coming the other way, I think it'll turn green.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, some are, and some are set on cycle here. Some are like that. Some are just cycles, whatever. So, we should announce, and we should announce more than once, because the only way Tig Lily and my wife can see their comments are when we throw them up on the screen, because they are watching through two different YouTube channels right now.
Right. So,
we're going to
are
fix
we
that.
ready? We're going to fix that. Ladies and gentlemen, barflies, presidents, diplomats from all over the world, starting next week, we will be live from the Drinks and Dave YouTube page.
What?
So, yes, we finally have.
Wow.
Well, I would love to say we broke the 100 mark, but we didn't. I pleaded and cried to YouTube, and they felt sorry for us. And we are now allowed to go live.
Right. Either that or we realize they changed their rule at some point.
Well, yeah,
We
but
were
this sounds
begging for
better.
subscribers.
So,
Yeah.
everybody, don't forget, next week we will be live from Drinks and Dave's on YouTube. So, make sure you
Only.
get subscribed to that. Only
Yeah,
from
only
there.
Drinks and Dave. But then that's cool because everybody will be able to see everybody's comments.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
my
yes.
dad points out if we use $1 million worth of technology, we can get back to when the cop was just saying, "Your turn, your turn."
Yeah, and some of those cops really got into it. If you watch some of the old films, like in New York, they would dance around and have all kinds of fun.
Yeah. Now, before I tell my amazing story, what are you smoking, Dave?
I am smoking a Espinosa Wasabi.
Wasabi.
Yes,
Is it
it's
spicy?
a
Wait, did
no,
you do that
no.
on this channel already?
no,
No.
no.
It's green
It's
though,
a
right?
it's a Candela wrapper, and it's wrapped, and the filler and binder are secret. Espinosa never tells anybody. But I will say, on the initial light, huge jalapeno wasabi hit. So it's
Pass.
spicy. And then when you retrohale, it's like fire. It's very
Good for you.
peppery, spicy. It's wonderful. With a
All
little
right.
bit of soy sauce.
So I was going into the humidor, and I've sometimes been trying to pair my cigar or my scotch, I guess more the scotch anyway, with what the topic is.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what can I pair with watches? What the heck? So is this going to show? This is here we
Oh,
go.
one of the-
That's true, man, because there's a clock
Mm-hmm.
on the wrapper, so that goes with our watch.
Very nice. So that segues into what are you drinking?
What am I drinking? I'm going Glasgow blend, which is from Compass Box, who is a blender. They don't make anything. They buy a bunch of different scotches and blend it together.
And I'm going real hardcore tonight. I am drinking a Virgil's orange cream soda.
Hey, sometimes you make me look like the drunk.
And
Okay, so let me tell you the good story. Can I do
Okay.
that?
Mm-hmm.
So I rarely do this, but just last night I got onto my recliner. Wife was watching some rom-com. So I put on my headphones and I decided I'm going to listen to music. And so I bring up Spotify, and there's this thing that says DJ, which I've never known what it was. I decided to click on it. It's this artificial intelligence dude who talks to you, and it said, "Hey, David, we noticed you watched this and that. I put together some channels for you." And so he played, what did he say? I noticed you listened to, I forget what it was, but he played something from that group and then several similar things, and then came back on after 4 songs. And it's like, now let's listen to some stuff you liked back in 2020. I'm like, that is super cool.
Yes, and then all of a sudden you get Skynet. The Terminator shows up at your house.
But if he's got good info, I'll let him in. But I'm thinking this is perfect because some of it was songs that I had liked and some were like similar-ish. So it reminds me of the days, you go to Tower Records and they had all those displays you could listen and like find new artists and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
So
we go.
basically, you want your life to be very similar to the passengers on the starship during the Disney Wall-E.
well,
Where they don't do anything. They don't have
did
to.
I say that?
No,
No,
but-
I can't. If I could go to Tower Records and find new artists, I would do that. And so sometimes I do, right?
Isn't-
Like you.
But isn't iMusic that way? Apple Music?
I don't use Apple Music, Dave.
But you have
But
Apple
it
stuff.
probably, I mean, you got to spend the time though, right? And I just
Yes.
contradicted myself because I would drive down to Tower Records, but that's a whole, as the kids would say, Dave, that's a vibe. Going to Tower
is
Records,
that
that's
is
a
that
whole
the word?
experience.
Somehow I think the word vibe was more like when we were kids, not necessarily what the kids are doing now.
No, that's a new.
Is it?
Yeah. All right. So what are we talking about today, Dave?
Watches, horological wonders of
Watch
the
it,
world.
Watch what you're saying.
Horological. What are you wearing? What are you wearing for your watch today?
Oh, I didn't put on. It's a Tudor. I didn't put it
Nice.
on purpose. Yeah.
Very nice.
And a kind of dressy Tudor.
I'm kind of lazy today. I am wearing the same watch I wore yesterday, which is an Oris Aquis.
Oris. Now that's got an interesting face to it, right? That's
Yes, this one is oyster shell.
oyster shell.
Oyster
Cool.
shell,
So-
Swiss made.
So I have some thought questions about watches, but I figured you probably had some ideas of your own and kind of talking about some of your favorites or something. So
Actually, I didn't, so the show is yours.
wow. Okay. So let me set the scene. My dad's down visiting. We go to Toppers, which is your holy grail watch shop to visit, which is 10 miles that way.
That would be dangerous if I lived there.
Yeah. Beautiful new big store. We're looking at watches. He kind of like resets the reality, right? Of like, don't do that, Dave. Of looking at watches and not knowing, some brands stick out. Everybody knows
Sure.
Rolex. A lot of people know what
Omega,
Breitling.
Breitling. Right?
But there's some other ones that are pretty high end that if you're not into it, you wouldn't know. And
Mhm.
it's hard for some of them to look at and know that that's a $10,000 watch or even a $1,000 watch because it looks very similar in design to a $40 watch.
Sure.
Right. So it got me thinking, like, you know what? That's the crazy part about watches. And I want to hear your opinion on this. In that, like a car, you can tell what you're paying for. It's going to go faster. You can hear it in the engine. The tires are huge, right? The more expensive cars, usually it's apparent in the performance or looking at it.
Okay.
A watch, a lot of what you're paying for, you can't even see.
Agreed.
And we know the most accurate, first of all, the most accurate time's your phone, right? So in terms of usefulness, nobody got need. A few people have need for a watch, like if you can't grab your phone, you're diving, whatever. But most people have no need for a watch.
Well, okay. The most accurate watch is actually the atomic clock or the National Institute of Standardized Time, which if your watch is connected to that makes it what. But traditionally, quartz watches are the most accurate because of the variations. However, the philosophy that a car is faster or more expensive because of the wheels, tires, and everything else. But you'll have some people that will make the same argument with watches as you will with cars. Well, why do you need a X number of dollar Corvette or an X number of dollar Tesla or an X number of dollar Ferrari when a Yugo will get you from point A to point B? Well, the argument could be said that I can use my phone as a watch because why need I have a watch?
No, I was saying that with a car, the dollar difference tends to be more easily apparent. Versus a watch, $1,000 watch versus an $8,000 watch, visually can look very similar.
Absolutely.
So you're
And
paying for stuff that
you're paying for
isn't obvious.
No, you're paying for a name, you're paying for marketing, you're paying for the mystique that a watch has. And I hate to use the big R as an example, but the cost of those watches has gone absolutely stupid in the last
Right.
couple of years. And, people will say, oh, I have a Rolex, I have a Submariner, I have a GMT Master, I have a Rolex Daytona. But yet there are companies out there that are using, and one of the main differences is Rolex traditionally uses 440 stainless steel, where most of the other places use 318L stainless steel. However, I would argue that there are some companies out there that you could buy 40 of and get the same quality, and I'm speaking of Steinhardt is one of the best ones. Solid stainless steel, Swiss Solida movements. Now, granted, they're not a Rolex in-house movement, but they're every bit as nice, in my opinion, as a Rolex. And somebody brought up, yeah, they break down a lot. Sharon knows that.
Well,
So yeah, you're paying for, but then I say that and I completely contradict myself because to me, there is nothing like an Omega. I don't care
Right.
what there is. There's nothing.
so flip side, why?
Okay. Why is there nothing like an Omega? the fit, the finish, the feel, the history.
Yeah.
And if you're James Bond, you say Omega instead of Omega.
Oh my God. Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of times I think about that. So I know one thing you get with higher price is more accuracy, right? In an automatic watch, we're talking non-quartz watches, that if you pay for a better movement, the works inside the watch, you can lose what's good performance? A second a day, 2 seconds a day is
Oh,
pretty good performance, right?
yeah. I mean, actually, I think that the chronometric, and somebody can chime in here. I think the chronometric, to be certified as an official chronometer, you can lose no more than 1 to 3 seconds. I think every 48 hours, I believe it is,
I thought
for
it
an
was day.
automatic.
Okay, so
It
but
could
to
be a
let
day.
people, because not everybody is into watches like you are. Um,
Oh, nice recovery. No, and that's only because you know who is here.
right, but it's chronograph is the right term, right?
Well, no,
Chronometer,
chronometer. Chronometer.
chronometer, which I used to think was a stopwatch, but a chronometer is a watch movement that was sent off for testing and proven to be dead balls accurate to a couple of seconds a day,
Exactly.
probably something like
Exactly.
that.
And you pay more for that usually.
Right. Which, again, is kind of cool. But for people that own more than one watch and rotate, it matters not a lick because you set the time on that watch, put it on, wear it for a day or two, put it away, and the next time you get it out, it's dead and you're resetting it again anyway.
Agreed.
But it is kind of that. Um, it's more for you, right? It's not for other people. Just knowing the technology that's on your wrist and the sophistication, and just even what's amazing is thinking about older watches before technology is what it is now, and that they could make parts that small and be accurate at all.
Oh, well, if you go
Is
back to
amazing.
if you go back to the days of Breguet, or even earlier than that, each one of those watches, each one of those escapements, each one of those springs, each one of those jewels was handmade.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
nuts.
yeah, that's
It's
crazy. And to
insane.
me,
Yeah.
when you get people that say, "Well, I've got my quartz watch or I've got my Apple Watch and it tracks this and that's all fine and dandy," but open up the back of it and look at a quartz watch. You're going to see a battery, a couple of resistors, maybe a capacitor, and that's it.
Yeah.
On a automatic or a manual wound movement, you're going to see art, in my opinion. You're going to see artistic, just beauty. And then, of course, you get into the tourbillons, but that's a whole nother animal.
That's a whole nother thing. So so that's where we're at, right? Is there's no need for it. And some people would appreciate what's inside that you can't see just knowing, and it's that, right? Can you look at your wrist and you know what's happening inside, and you
Hmm.
take just those few seconds every now and again. I assume you do this too. You look at it and you're just like, this is amazing.
Oh yeah, no, the engineering, the machinery, and the thing is, and I think that's some of the popularity of watches, and as of late, is you have three ways that you can see the movement through the dial. You have an open heart, which will usually show the spring, or you have a tourbillon, which is the actual movement that you can see, or a lot of them have open case backs now, where you can actually take the watch off and look. And I'm guilty of that. I've taken that when I know that I've got a case back, I'll take off and just watch it, and it's neat to see that basically our lives are based on everything that you see on the face of that watch or on your phone or on
Yeah.
so when people say, "Oh, I don't need a watch," well, actually you do, because if I go up to you and I say, "What time is it?" It doesn't matter how you tell me, whether it be through your phone or through your watch, or look up at the sun and guess,
Well,
it's still all time.
hey, I learned from my dad though, who lived in New York for some time, that when you're in New York and somebody asks for the time, you say, "Nah, I don't know. Sorry." Never take
Right?
out. Don't show them you're wearing a watch. Don't take
Oh,
out your phone. So okay, let's go. You mentioned it, and then Tig Lily, as an engineer, probably really appreciates this. You want to explain what a tourbillon is
yes.
and why it's no longer relevant, but still super cool.
Well, a tourbillon movement is well, you know what? Give me 3 seconds. I'll go get one. That way
Three
I can show
seconds.
it. Hold on a minute.
Beautiful. All right. So I'll say to our barflies that totally agree with Dave that I love just watching a watch work. And so for a while, I bought several watches. They're called skeleton, right? And that means that on the face of your watch, instead of just seeing something solid, it's see through, and you can see the works going, which I still think is amazing. But I like the faces now, and we'll get into that.
Okay, I
But that's
probably
what
should have brought this in.
that's what a bummer is. Is a lot of watches have glass on the back, so you can see the movement. But the
Hmm.
bummer, you got to take the watch off and purposefully do that.
Right.
But go ahead and talk about the
Okay,
tourbillon.
so the tourbillon at first, the major problem with watches that were automatic was number one, they were non-magnetic, which means you got near a magnet and it would screw up the time. So that was the first thing. Then vibration and movement. People were afraid that a regular watch movement was not going to stay accurate. So they created the tourbillon, and I don't know how well this is going to show up, but let's see here. That is a tourbillon movement, and if you notice, it actually spins on its own axis. So it's doing the same thing as any other automatic watch does, but the whole movement is right there.
Yeah. So
And
we're used to seeing the thing that goes bop 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 back and
mhm,
forth,
right,
and this one that goes bop bop bop, but the whole thing that's doing
yeah,
that
the
is
whole thing
also
circles,
rotating,
right.
and
And
the whole.
these,
Go ahead.
yeah, and these watches can go. Now this is a seagull movement. This is a Chinese tourbillon, and a lot of people poo-poo the Chinese watchmakers nowadays, but they are every bit as good as the Japanese and Swiss. But a movement like this in a Swiss tourbillon could cost you north of six figures. Where in a Chinese tourbillon, it's much less. And yes, that is a Stour, Rich,
Yeah.
and it's been very good watch. It's
And and so that was developed because, as you were saying, a watch. And I'm probably kind of butchering this, but the idea being is that there's error built into the movement of a watch based on what direction it's facing, pretty much. And so when you send a watch off to get um, certified, they measure it in many different directions. And the whole idea being is that if we're rotating that whole movement over time, the error that's built into it will negate itself, and it will
right.
be more accurate.
Right, because you're talking about the magnetic and the gravitational thing, and I do need to say one thing. I think Tig Lily has been into the tequila, because tourbillons ain't beautiful, skeletons are beautiful. So
Beautiful.
I think that the tequila has been
Right on.
no, but so you've got the magnetics of the Earth, you've got the rotation of the Earth, believe it or not, you've got gravity, so all those things, and the tourbillon was kind of designed to kind of negate a lot of those things. But now, as watchmakers are getting crazier and crazier, they now have a three-dimensional rotating tourbillon
Yeah.
that'll rotate on its own
Ain't nobody
axis.
can afford that.
No, That's
But well, the
almost
other
seven
thing
figures.
is, again, so what my other comment about they're pointless, but they're still cool, is you got the technology built long ago to do that, to rotate a whole movement while it's working. But most nicer watches have some type of shielding from magnetism, and the error rate is so low that you really don't need a tourbillon. Where they did that right for like the railroads or
Hmm.
shipping or whatever, where they really needed to stay.
Well, the first watch that was actually railroad certified, and I want to ask about this, but the first watch that was railroad certified was made by a company called Ball, and it was considered the railroad standard for timing, and it was actually at one time the most accurate watch. And Ball still makes watches to this day. So I have to ask about that. So your boss, or Pantea's boss, has a $60,000 watch. I'm guessing it has to be a Daytona. Am
No, it's
I?
not a Rolex, buddy.
Oh, so Audemars Piguet.
I think it's a Patek
Oh,
Philippe.
okay. Right.
Yeah.
And see, okay, so now that you bring that up, Patek Philippe, beautiful watches, but in my mind, does that watch from a design level, because it's basically like a tank watch that's been elongated a little bit, almost a cushion case, does that, because you can't find a Patek Philippe for under 40, I don't think. I mean, I don't know if you can or not.
I haven't looked.
I just don't see the aesthetics
Be
for
right
me.
back. I'll go grab mine. Let me show you.
Okay.
Well,
And
and
then we
that's
hear this as Pantea throws you off the balcony. No, I just,
um,
but I think a lot of times,
mhm,
quality is in the eye of the beholder. So for her boss,
right.
obviously a man of means, when he has a meeting with high level people, and that's another thing that we haven't even talked about, is that men and maybe ladies as well. I don't want to speak. When you sit down at a meeting and you've got a suit on and your watch peeks out from your wrist, people notice. They do, whether they want to admit it or not. And I think people do make judgments. I mean, because if I see somebody wearing an Apple Watch, as bad as that sounds, and I have one.
Oh,
I think differently than if I see a nice watch, and it doesn't matter whether it's an expensive watch or whether it's a non-expensive watch.
we
There's just something about I think that we as men have always, my dad never left without his wristwatch on. I mean, just never, and
yeah.
so.
Well, what's interesting? I was just watching a YouTuber with watches, and they pointed out that a lot of heads of states of certain countries, when they got to that point, they have very, very nice watches, but put on like an Apple Watch
Hmm.
because what would people think if they had $60,000 on their wrist,
Sure.
and then we're talking about we're not going to provide more support for this or that.
Well, and also now, especially Apple. I mean, I've got to applaud them, is they're already carbon neutral, and they weren't supposed to be until 2030. That says
Already,
something, you
yeah.
know.
The other thing is, so I know that her boss has this one watch, right? He's not a collector and stuff, and he decided what he wanted, found a way to get it, got it. And where's this? And who knows what his reasoning would be? It could be because he's in finance. It is kind of like you kind of have to match the group you're with, and it could be just this is something I can afford. I know what it means, and it just makes me feel good.
Well, it could also mean that during his career, he may have, because we're exposed to watches all the time, and Pantea brought a very good point up,
Mhm.
just a simple, classic looking watch. He may have seen that and said, someday, when I'm at the point where I can get one, so it is an accomplishment for people too.
Oh, here you go. He doesn't wear it all the time. He wears a sports watch
Oh,
other
okay.
days. Yeah. Well, and I know Rolex, I believe, not to speak for the world, but I think that's a lot of it too, that it's got the cachet. You've made it if you've got a Rolex. So when people get there and can afford a watch, they're kind of like, that's what I've always. So let me tell you, one of my, I don't know how much we're going to get into favorite watches and stuff because I'd like to keep it more general for the whole crowd. But one of
Hmm.
my favorite watches is a Tag Heuer, which is not all that expensive, the one that I have. But
Right.
the reason that I have it is grew up watching racing with my dad, and that's back when Tag was the
Hmm.
timer for everything, right? So I always thought, wow, that's it. If you can get a Tag, that's really cool. And when I started deciding I'd like to get back into watches at a bit higher level, found one at Toppers used and pointed out to my wife, and that was a Father's Day gift, and that was my first, and it's by far means not anywhere close to the most expensive.
Right.
It's
But that's
one of the
that's
less,
your that's that
but
Tag Heuer that's the Tag Heuer Formula One, yeah, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
But that's
Well.
a quartz, so I
Hmm.
can throw it on my wrist every weekend. Don't have to sit there and mess with it and all this stuff. But it's like I finally attained this thing that, as a kid, I was always like, "Well, you made it if you've got that."
Well, and that memory happens every time you put it on your wrist.
Yep. Yep.
And like for me, and same thing. It's funny how you talk about Tag Heuer, because that was my thing when I got my Carrera, and I bought this years ago, and it's like I finally got a Carrera, which represents the racing that I used to watch. And and then and Tag Heuer for years was the but now Rolex has kind of pushed their way into the timing thing, and they did that because one of the most expensive watches ever auctioned off was Paul Newman's. I think it was either Paul Newman or Steve McQueen.
The Le Mans.
He had, yeah, well, no, it was a Rolex Daytona, but it was
Oh,
with a different type of dial, and that thing went for 7 million, I think, something like that, in an auction, or maybe in 14 million.
here he is, PB. Wondering where you been, buddy. What are you drinking? He came in
So
late.
he's got one of the original Hoyer chronographs.
Original, right? So Tag and Heuer were different companies, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then they merged, and then we
Right.
got Tag Heuer, and then they got smeared all over. I don't remember the history.
Well, they
They were
became
not.
the what they call the avant-garde watch, and people said, "Oh, you have a Tag Heuer, you're a weenie." But but the thing is, what people don't realize is there's really only a few major watch companies, and they own multiple brands. Rolex owns
Yeah.
itself, and Tudor, they're together. But the Tudor watches for the price are every bit as nice, in my opinion. But you look at the Swatch Group, and
Mhm.
all of us remember when we were growing up, Swatches, these plastic Swatch watches, and now they own Omega. They own I don't know all the companies they own, but they own a bunch.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know.
and I just lost what I was gonna say. So before, so I had two thought questions. We did one before I got into the next one, because we want to make the announcement a few times to catch people watching this on replay.
Yes.
What happens next week, Dave?
Next week, we're having a special guest, number one, which we'll talk about here in
Mm,
a second.
okay.
Chad Vargo from the Shaving Cadre is going to join us, but it's not going to be about shaving. Chad is a
Mm,
professional referee, and he is a referee on, I believe, high school basketball and football, and then also college football, and I believe college basketball. So next week, bring all of your questions about referees when you watch games, but the most important part about it is that you will be watching us on the Drinks and Dave's YouTube channel. We finally get to move over, and so you won't be seeing it on Nurse Dave Shaving World or Barber Dave Shaves and such. It will be live on Drinks and Dave's. And the good news is those of you that are in the lounge and the barflies, you'll be able to interact with your chats back and forth, because right now, depending on which channel you're on, you can't interact. So this is interactive as well. This is a huge thing for us.
yeah.
We're extremely excited for this to happen. So make sure you tell everybody to join us on Drinks and Dave's next week.
So I'm gonna put up P Beat's next question here, but first I want to explain something about me and a lot of the hobbies I'm in, and I'll put this up to see if you can answer it. Is I don't get super nerdy about it. I get nerdy at the beginning. I'll watch everything I can, and then I don't care about it. I can't name the models of the watches I own. A lot of people know the movements that are in them, right? The not it's not model numbers, all
Right.
that stuff. I like the looks of this one. I don't like the looks of that one. That's as far as I go. So by the name, I would have no clue what this is.
Okay,
Breitling.
the Breitling Chronomat GMT40. Yes, I do like the Chronomat. The Chronomat has been around forever. It's the second model next to the Navitimer, and the Chronomat is beautiful. It's gone through multiple iterations over the years, and I think the Breitling. I mean, it's an aviation watch. It's a fantastic watch. They're as far as their super quartz, which is their quartz line, it's a little bit more expensive, but Breitling has just got a tremendous name. They're just a fantastic watch.
Yeah, bright light, and I don't know the model name of it. They've got one with three subdials in it, and it comes in like this pistachio green.
Mm-hmm.
That's on my want list. I only have a couple high end watches still right now
Mm-hmm.
on my watch. That's one of them. So let me ask you the second thought question: homage watches and
Mm-hmm.
replica watches.
Okay. Oh,
What
this is a
what say you?
controversial thing.
What say you?
You know, I
Wait,
used to.
you can explain the difference first. The difference
Okay,
between.
basically, you have three types. You have homage watches. You have the real watch. You have the homage watch, and then you have the replica watch, and then you flat out have a counterfeit. So let's go through each one. The real watch, obvious. It's all the research and development has been done by that company. And I'm going to use the Rolex Submariner and GMT Master for an example. That is the most copied watch on the planet, period. Every single company has a version that looks like that. So that's where we get into homage watches. An homage watch is a watch that looks almost identical or similar to that real watch. However, it's branded differently. It'll have different wording on it, and they're not claiming to be that watch. Then you have the replicas, and in the replicas, you've got two, well, actually, probably three subsections. You've got the high end Swiss replicas, which, unless you have a very, very well trained eye, you cannot tell the difference between
Right.
the real one and the replica. Then you have the Asian
And wait,
replicas.
and they
Uh-huh.
call those super replicas, and they can cost north of $600.
Oh, they can cost thousands. Yeah, they sure can. Um, and so before we go even down into the eastern versions, those first two are usually Swiss made by a manufacturer. They don't support bad people, but when you get into the Indian, the Asian, and stuff like that, when you get down into the really bad replicas, sometimes that money can be funneled to places that you don't want it to be funneled to. And then on the fake watches, those are your bargain basement. You go to New York City, you go into Chinatown, they'll usually have the fake ones up in front for 40, $50. And then if you want something a little bit better, they'll take you into the back room. And, and Rolex is probably the most copied, and they are the most aggressive when they go after counterfeits. And to make it a counterfeit, it must say the word Rolex on it. It must say officially certified chronometer or GMT. So they're basically ripping off the branding
Right.
of that. Now, I just received. I don't have it here. It's being worked on by my crack horological team right now, but I received a extremely hilarious replica. Well, it's not even a replica. It would be considered an homage because where it says Rolex, it says relax, RELA, and then the crown of the Rolex is laying down, and it'll say built in a garage. So those type are fun. Now, with all that being said, what are my feelings on them? I used to be the snob that would say, if you wear a replica, you're not worth the price of paint. That attitude of mine has changed to the point where if you like the watch and you cannot afford the watch and you feel okay wearing that watch, because I do have a real one, I do have a replica. Now, if I'm going a certain place traveling, will I wear the replica before I wear the real one? Absolutely. Because if I get jacked, they can have that one. And so to me, my philosophy on watches and replicas and stuff like that has really changed to the point where if you like it, wear it. Wear it. And PB also brought up the Cartier tank is a victim of that. I mean, the tank watch is another classic. Everybody, I remember for a while, everybody wanted a tank watch. I'm one of those weird ones that just does not like the look of a tank watch. But they've been copied. And so has the watch that you mentioned that Pantea's boss has. Those are copied left and right. Even some of the best, even the best Japanese brand, Seiko, is now being copied because Seiko's dollar amounts have gone. I remember, where a $350 Seiko was considered one of their most expensive. Now you can get into the tens of thousands on a Seiko Presage or something like that. So to me, if you like it, wear it.
So I'm all in favor of the cheap, or what we kind of make fun calling them legit watches. Major Rich is part of that group, right? Where you say you'll get a $20 Rolex that you're lucky if it holds the time through the end of the day. And it very obviously isn't a Rolex. And I'm all on board with when I was first a nurse, I had a Rolex that I got in Tijuana for $20 that had diamonds all over the face.
Sure.
And I wore it every day at work because there's nobody going to believe you're wearing like diamond Rolex and stuff. And it's totally legit. But here's where, and I'm not. So, okay, I'm more on the fence. I guess I'm kind of like you because I have heard also like doctors and anesthesia. I've seen stories where they find out what they're wearing is a replica because they're like, I've got other stuff to spend my money on, but within my group of people, it brings prestige and I'm expected. I'm a doctor or whatever. People kind of. But, I guess that's just your personality. If you're going to play into, they expect me to wear this. So I don't want to spend 10 grand on this. So I'll spend $1,000 and save. But the interesting thing I get to is you're right. Some of these replicas are so good, you have to take off the back to tell the difference. And so then it becomes, what's the point in buying the real one? If they look identical, and it's just made by a different, not right legally that they're ripping them off and copying the name and all this stuff. But it's like, then what are you paying for say to that point, getting a Rolex versus a replica that looks exactly the same. So
Mm-hmm.
it's obviously got great craftsmanship, right? Good materials.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, is it 1,000 for all of that and 15 grand for the name?
Well, I think there's where there's where I have some ethical things. When if you get a replica that's so good that only a jeweler can tell the difference, that to me screams counterfeit. And I'm not saying and whoever buys those, great, go for them. So to me, what I did is I wanted to find everything, like you've seen the Steinhardts that I have.
Yeah.
It's not a Rolex. It doesn't say Rolex. It doesn't claim to be a Rolex. But if you were across a room and you saw this watch, for instance, my 39 millimeter Steinhardt Pepsi, it's just like the GMT Master. It's got Swiss components, good stainless steel. But I think what it is it's a lot of it for a lot of people, and I'm guilty of it, and I'm sure you are. It's perception. It's perception because, and I go back to earlier, and I think both men and women do this. If you're at a social gathering, people will look down and see what type of accoutrement you have on, whether it be a ring, whether it be a watch. Men will usually beeline right for the watch. And I've had it happen where I've been wearing that Steinhardt in the shop, and one of my clients who's wearing a Rolex will say, "Oh, that's a nice GMT Master." I said, "No, it's a Steinhardt." And believe it or not, you get the look.
Hmm.
You get the look, and
Oh.
I don't
Oh.
care. Yeah. Oh, and it's like, so what? But I do have both though. So, I have the Omegas, I have the Rolex, I have,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I wear watches based on what they look like and what they make me feel like, and that's why I have, well, I remember, and you remember when I bought this, I was all excited about the Tag Heuer Connected. It's a smartwatch because the only knock that I have on the Apple Watch is the way it looks, because it does represent kind of a tank square watch. And so Tag Heuer came out with the Connected, and it's nice, but you wear it for 6 hours and now you've got a brick on your wrist because the battery ran out. So now they've improved that since the model I have. But to me, I just love, the reason why I have so many watches is because I just love the technical side of, like what you were saying earlier. You look at that and you say, this is micro componentry, and I know Rich is really starting to get into putting the watches together, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and the other thing is that they can be works of art on your wrist, what you can see, and that really becomes personal preference if that matters a hoot to you.
Sure.
But like, especially, I'm also a big Omega fan, and there's a difference in the detail, the crisp edges, all of that in a face of a high-end watch versus one that's a couple $100, and it might not matter to most people, but same thing with what you hang on your wall, right? Some people will go to Target and get pretty flowers, or you pay thousands of dollars for a beautiful painting.
Well, it's any hobby, I mean,
Yeah.
cigars even, I mean, I smoked a cigar one week, and the boss asked me how much the cigar was, and literally she looked at me like I had snapped,
Right. Well, you're
because
nuts.
well, yeah, but it was the taste, and it's what I like, and so I think any hobby can be justified financially depending on the person. But I wanted to catch something that P-Beat said about automatic movements versus quartz
Oh,
movements, and one movement we haven't even talked about yet is one that Accutron. Bulova, before they split off, Bulova created the Accutron, which was, the movement was a tuning fork, and you could actually hear it, a very high pitched hum. It was a great movement, and now you don't really see them anymore, but you do have some electric versions of that now, but you can still get those old watches. But I prefer automatics simply because of the technical, just knowing that thing is just sitting there and it's got a heartbeat. However, that being said, automatics can be a real pain if you have a lot of watches that you rotate through on a regular basis. The nice
yeah.
thing about, like you said, with the quartz, you throw it on your wrist, the date's right, you go, boom. So I like them all.
Yeah, well, and so the other thing that's super frustrating, and so same reason, is that if you want a nicer looking watch from a nice company, they're almost all automatics.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Grand Seiko, and no people don't know, there's Seiko, and then they've got a line which is Grand Seiko, which is in the realm of Rolex, right? Price wise.
Right.
And they do have some of those that are quartz,
Mm-hmm.
but the price drop that you get, I mean, because a lot of the cost of a high end watch is the movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
The price drop you get switching to quartz is not what it should be
I
for
agree.
having a very simple battery powered movement inside. And so from that aspect, while like I mentioned, the tag I love throwing on my wrist, it just works. It's a weekend watch. And if I could get a Grand Seiko for half the price that's a quartz, I might go that route for the
Well,
same reason.
and here's one thing you have to realize with the quartz movements. Like Breitling is a perfect example, and I think Seiko with their and now you have kinetic movements. You've got all kinds of stuff going on now. But speaking directly to the quartz movement, like Breitling, if you get let's say a baseline Navitimer is going to cost you between $5,000 and $7,000, a baseline Breitling Super Quartz, which the Emergency has in it, the B1, the B2, and the new Triathlon. It's a quartz watch. It literally is a quartz watch. But the difference is these watches have been chronometer tested. That's where you see a lot of the bigger price tag because they can claim to be a chronometer. Now, Sharon also asked about do pilot watches have altimeters? No, traditionally they don't. However, most of your electronic watches, like your Tag Connected, your Apple Watch, do have altimeters built in because they do all the other stuff. What they usually have is flight computers, usually, turning bezels and stuff like that. But nowadays,
they got about 7,000 numbers around the outside.
yeah, and
whereas
that's
if you
all.
didn't-
Yeah, and that's all based for how for flight planning on a leg and stuff like that. The problem is now you can type in coordinates on this and be done with it. So that brings up a perfect point. Is okay if in fact, well, for instance, you and I both love the World Timer. Give me the name. I just spaced it out. The World Timers that we both have.
the
Glycine.
24 hour.
Glycine. Glycine actually predates the GMT and the pilot watches from Rolex. But to this day, like my Glycine has 4 time zones, and you have multiple turns. And do you need that? No, but it harkens back. Like with the Navitimer, the Breitling Navitimer probably has the most detailed bezel of any flight computer, and that's what it is. It's the old flight computer. Well, nowadays you don't need that, but it would look
That's
pretty
similar to
boring.
take it back to something like cars, right? Like you can't, and I'm not just pulling stuff out of my whatever, but like if you wanted a Porsche because of the looks and the frame and stuff, you could not say, I just want it for the looks, but I want like 150 horsepower engine in it because I don't care how fast it goes.
Right.
You buy a high end watch, it's gonna like divers is an excellent example. So diving watch is a whole category that's mostly aesthetics because they look a certain way, but they are waterproof to a certain depth.
Sure. Well,
Because it's a diver watch, but
Right.
99% of the people wearing the thing will never take it in the water in
Absolutely.
the first place.
Well, I have 2. I have the Seiko Monster, which has got a cult following. In fact, Rich just put together an orange Seiko Monster that is just beautiful. But that watch is rated to like 300 meters, and then I've got this my Grail watch, my Omega Seamaster Professional, the Planet Ocean. It's 600 meters. My fat butt is never going down to 600 meters.
Well, even if we could tie rocks to you and you could get down that far, you're not about to put that watch on to go diving with, right? So that's the thing is
Exactly.
you've got these $10,000 watches that are dive watches certified to whatever depth. And it's like, well, okay, so maybe there's a couple people that own their own yachts and stuff, and that's what
Sure.
they wear. But for the most part, you're not going to do that.
No, it's all looks like the one of Rolex's and by the way, I have a Pam 110. By the way, I do have a Panerai, but the problem with Panerai is they suck to wear. They're it's like wearing a dinner plate on your wrist, and the way the crown cover is, if you bend your hand, like if you're trying to write something, I'm left-handed, you look like you've been drunk when you're trying to write because you can't get the pen down far enough onto the paper. But no, I mean, one of Rolex's biggest things in the beginning was wear the watch that Sir Edmund Hillary wore to the top of Mount Everest.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
been
that's cool.
disproven, hasn't it? Actually, I
What's that?
think.
Yeah, it has been disproven. But
Go
but
ahead.
but
Yeah.
but watches are, to me, and this sounds terrible because I'm guilty of it. Watches are about marketing and about ego. Because I don't care what anybody says. Like when you wear that Formula One watch, a little part of you feels like a race car driver. Or when no, I mean seriously, and when I wear my Tag Heuer Carrera, it's like I'm inside of a Porsche. It's ego. But the thing is, and one thing we haven't touched on is ladies watches versus men's watches. There are a ton of ladies that love high end looking watches, whether that be Rolex, whether that be Cartier. I mean, and then some they don't care. So
Well, I heard that the new trend is that ladies actually wearing men's watches because there are so not a lot of companies make ladies watches,
right,
and
right.
so they want the choice and all that.
Well, I think in the watches, and Pantay is probably going to Pantay. If you're drinking any coffee right now, swallow it because I don't want to see you have to spit this up when you start laughing. But believe it or not, watches, and a certain individual here will verify, watches was my gateway drug because there was a show on TV,
Mm.
and it was called Shop NBC,
Oh,
and Shop NBC had a watch section, and it was so easy to watch. And they had pay in 12, pay in 6, pay in 5, so you'd order 5 watches at a time. That was my gateway, and then it led to shaving, and well, we know the history from that on.
yeah. Something that I don't know if most people are aware of this if you're not into watches, but micro brands is again, I haven't been into watches that long again, right? Back in college, I was one of those people that I wanted more than one. I thought
Hmm.
it'd be neat to rotate through, so I got my collection of, I don't know, 10-ish or something like that. And then got back into it just a couple years ago. So micro brands have been around since I've been back into it, but I think it's a newer
Sure.
thing, right? And it's a lot of independent companies. Some companies are just one or two people starting to produce. Some look very similar to watches that are out there, but some are very different. But mid-range watches, right? I would say
Hmm.
that micro brands probably start around 400 and go on up to maybe about 2000. So we call them mid-range type watches.
Well, I know that you, and I would call you kind of like the micro brand
Ambassador.
guru. Well, yeah, because the thing is, you've got some brands, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's the one that has it's kind of a tawny tannish color with orange, but it's got the face is very very rough.
Mm,
You know which one I'm talking about?
I think so. One's a Nomos that I've got
No, it's not the
three. No,
Nomos. It's
no.
the one you got when you went to that San Francisco show.
Oh, yeah, it's a French brand. I
Yes,
have to
yes,
look at
yes.
it every time I look at wear the watch.
Right.
But yeah, that's sexy as heck.
Yeah, and so that's the problem though, is there's so many micro brands out there now that have every bit the quality of the big names, and
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
and
and because people might not also know that except for the very big names that make their own movements, now most of the micro brands will buy their movements from
hmm
some other company or they've got it figured out, they've got the tooling. And like I said early on, that's not what you're looking at. You're
right.
looking at the face and the case, and that's where they make their distinction.
Hmm.
And don't let you change the battery, their service. Yeah. So that's a, and this, so there's some controversial stuff that's like way into the weeds. And I've heard opinions, doing the research on both sides. So what, P Beat's mentioning is, you've got these hundreds to thousands of components in your watch that have to, the precision of these things is amazing, right? They're on your
Hmm.
hand, they're getting knocked around, moved around, all this stuff, and the parts are so small and they just keep working. But there's wear happening on it.
Hmm.
There's just micro dots of lubrication on these things. And so sooner or later they will stop being as precise,
Right.
if not just break. And so you send them in for what they call a service where they get stripped apart, cleaned, relubed, and that ain't cheap.
No.
So the
I just
upkeep on these
and
things.
well, and it's not cheap. I had my tag completely redone, but that I had messed up the case, so it had a brand new case, brand new band. But when I sent my Omegas out, it was darn near a year before I got them back. So
Yeah.
that's the detriment to having a high end automatic watch is you do need to service it. And what's funny is a lot of these jewelry places, exactly, you know, the you can send it to an authorized dealer, thinking you're taking it down to your local brick and mortar, and they can do it, and all they do is send it off to
Send
Omega,
it. Well,
and that
so
could
you
be
just had a
months.
good point. That's why you need more than one watch because you need something to wear while they're off at the shop.
It's like straight razors, yeah. While
Yeah.
one's being sharpened, you got to be able to have another one.
But
But yeah,
there's
that's
been controversy about so some places say, well, send it in preventatively, like your
every
car
3 years,
change,
right?
right? And then you watch some show where they've got like a guy who is a watch repairman or has his own watch company and goes, that's hooey. If it's working, it's working.
Right.
Just wait until it slows down. Same with watch winders, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some
Mm-hmm.
people argue it's better to keep your watch moving and keep it lubricated. So put it on a watch winder. That's a whole nother. I'm all right. I'll keep on topic.
Well, no, but actually, the watch winder thing to me, and this is just my opinion, watch winders, yeah, they keep everything moving, but the real reason to me to have a watch winder, and I do have one that I keep one watch on because it's such a bear to set, and that's my older Omega that Sharon got me for my birthday. It's just a pain to set the date because the
Yeah.
crown is so tiny. So yeah, I think a lot of it is you know if is there somebody that will open up their wallet to send in their automatic watch every 2 years? Absolutely, and they know that because let's say this poor person spent 20 years getting up enough money to buy this watch, they're going to baby the heck out of it. But I think it was said earlier in the episode that one of the best names in the world, they break down all the time.
Well, I have
And
my valet after he sets out my morning clothes. We rotate my watches that he sends off for repair. But so the flip side of the whole watch winder thing
I feel
that
an
I
eye roll
heard
coming
from
on.
what's
I
that?
said I feel an eye roll coming on from a certain individual.
Yeah. But the flip side of keeping it lubricated is you're continuously making wear. It's continuously working. The parts are continuously rubbing against each other.
Hmm.
So, this guy who manufactures watches said, I've got a collection. Some sit for 2 years. I wind them up and they work fine. Why would I
Right,
want to keep that on a
right,
winder?
right. Well, and here's something we haven't talked about yet: is
Food?
well, yeah,
Oh.
well, yeah, food can
What?
watches can be paired with food. If you're going out to have a hot dog and watch a drag race, your Formula One is perfect. If you're
Perfect.
going out to a high-end steak dinner, you may want to wear your Tudor or
You
your
know what?
Omega.
I had a catch-up issue with a watch once, actually. This was in, I think, middle school where I had one of those jobs working in the cafeteria, and I had just gotten this new fancy digital watch that played all sorts of songs, right? And you could set an alarm to play the wedding march on a certain day, a certain time, or happy birthday or whatever, right? And right on the face of it was a little speaker for all that stuff. And within days of buying this thing, I'm in the cafeteria doing the dishes, whatever I had to do, splashed ketchup right into the speaker of that thing, and it was all muted for the rest of the. So be careful with your food and your watches.
That's true. Now, here's another controversial. Well, probably not controversial. Is the do you like wearing a rubber strap, a leather strap, a
Oh, yeah.
silicone strap, or stainless steel?
Easy. Watches? Is that what
Hmm.
we're talking about? Watches? Um, Metal, because you can adjust it to fit perfectly.
Hmm.
Um, Although one of my Omega, what is that strap? When it's got like a rubber strap, but then it still has a clasp on the back. I don't know what you call
The
that.
silicone strap.
Silicone, but it has a fold over
Yeah, it
clasp.
has a
That
regular clasp on it, right?
I love that. But the problem with the leather, I like the look of some leather straps, but the holes are far enough apart that the perfect fit always seems to be between the holes.
Hmm.
And then when I wear those watches, I love looking at them, but it kind of drives me nuts all day long because they're a little bit loose.
Well,
You?
and and I have like this watch right here came with, and that's where I like what I love about Oris is they come with both. So they give you the option to change back and forth if
Yeah.
you
Now,
want.
do you do that?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do. It just depends, you know.
Because when you have several watches, you have several watch boxes, and
Hmm.
so I'll keep extra straps or whatever in the box, and it gets stored away. Sharon, we're on alive here, lady. Dude, what's going on over there, Dave?
The cat stole her chair.
Um, but I'll think about that. Maybe I'll try it with a different strap, but I have to go downstairs, find the box, and all this stuff. So I never do this. And PB's got a excellent point. Rolex works for weddings and taco stands,
True, true.
um, which is
Well,
another
because
reason
the
not to wear
well,
leather.
well, the Rolex Submariner is like the ultimate sports watch. I mean, it really is. I mean, it can be worn all the time, and the most popular one is the oh god, I forget which model number it is, but it's the simple black on black. That's the simple.
Panda?
But
You mean? I thought
no,
Panda's out there, probably.
no. The Rolex Submariner is just black on black. The thing is, you used to be able to get the Rolex Submariner not too many years ago for about 3-4 grand. Now,
Yeah.
a brand new Rolex Submariner with a ceramic bezel is going to do just a little bit north of $17,000 brand new. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
that's not.
That's
The
nuts.
only Rolex I think I would get is one with a meteorite dial. I love the look of those.
That'll run you a pretty
Yeah,
penny. But you have a meteorite dial, and
I
it's
do.
just as nice.
It
And
is. It is very cool. And again, I don't even remember the brand, but it's not only is it meteorite dial, but it has like two small circular meteorite pieces in different colors
hmm
on a rotating. So it's like sun and night, right? The lighter
right,
meteorites at the bottom and the dark. Very cool. A
right,
micro brand watch. Yeah.
right, exactly. So, I think with the bigger names, Rolex has the biggest name. Oh, I need to get a Rolex. But I think true and okay, I'm biased here, but true aficionados, Omega is the I think Omega is the one for me, anyways.
Yeah. Beautiful.
So
PB, did PB ever tell us what he's drinking tonight? I
no, he
don't think he
didn't. I
did.
was surprised, or did he?
Yeah. Throw it in there.
There's the eye roll. I knew it was coming. I just
Yeah, but
wasn't
I
sure
don't
when.
know what that's regarded to.
I think it's regarding the valet setting out your
Well,
clothes.
no, that was late. I think it's when you said we had to get a Rolex. And what I find myself doing, and I hate it every time I think of this, because I personally, again, everybody can like what they like. The style of Rolex doesn't do much for me. It looks very generic to me. And I thought, well, I never want a Rolex. Like, it's not worth the price to me. Oh, this is no. She's rolling. I can't remember the names. I got all these watches. I'm like, I don't know what. Well, that's what I'm saying is like the details. Like, I love that. See, I know what I've got, and I know what I like. Glenlivet. All right, he's scotching it up this time. That's all right. Um, and then gentleman's accessory. That's right.
Yes,
Certain watches. What were we talking about, Dave? I don't remember.
watches.
Well, oh no, I went down something, and then I got the eye roll, and that's all right. All I can. Rolex. But I find myself from time to time thinking again, just to have one, just because you can't get away from that's the name
No, you can't.
that
And
everybody thinks of, right?
yeah, I mean everybody thinks of that one.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I don't know what this. I'm used to it. But yeah, see, this is the problem. Not everybody can. I don't want to throw these up on the screen, but most of the people can't see the comments unless I can put it up on the screen. So,
Would you play
play
tennis?
tennis?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So I'll tell you. So I think his concern is that there can be some issues with G forces on watches, right? That can
Mhm.
cause some issues. I am a use everything that I buy. I don't buy
Yes.
anything just for display. So
Right.
the really nice fountain pens are on my desk at work getting used. All the watches get.
Right.
I mean, and I'm also one. If you scratch it, that's life patina, right? I mean, I'm
Right.
not. Uh, Jeez. I know we were talking about watches, a specific
Oh,
topic.
that is
The
the
specific
comment of the week.
yeah, yeah. All right. But you know, you hear that all the time now is like, do not get into watches as an investment, which, you know, Rolex prices are still nuts, but they used to be nutsier.
Yeah.
And if you got into them at that point and they crashed, you lost big time.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so
It's
I never think I'm gonna sell a watch when I buy it, and I think I would just put it away, thinking I might like it more later if I get tired of it.
right.
But scratches, all that stuff, you know, it'll be a bummer, but that's like it's your watch, right? It tells a
Well,
story of
and depending on the crystal that you get, I mean, if you get a sapphire crystal, scratching is not that big of an issue. Breaking is a big issue, but scratching isn't, as you well know when you had your famous stucco incident.
yeah. Yeah, I'll tell you. Okay, so again, contradicting myself, one thing I did get as a gift that I had put on my wish list was a leather pad for my desk,
Hmm.
because you see that all the time with used watches. You'll see desk rash
Right.
because if you're sitting there like this, rubbing your watch on the top of your desk all the time, it'll get all scratched up. And I thought, well, I don't
Well,
want
that's like,
that.
most people wear their watch on the opposite hand of their writing hand.
Yeah.
And most people are right handed. But what's funny is I've always worn my watch on my left hand. So I am more subject, and I'm left handed. So I am more subject to that
Mm.
wrist or watch rash because I've tried to wear the watch on the right hand side. It just ain't happening. It's like it's having a steering wheel on the right hand side of the car. It just doesn't work.
Okay, so why? So I know also traditionally women wear their watch, or are supposed to, right? Wear their watch on their right hand.
Oh, they
Do you know
do.
why that is?
No, because
Oh,
because I don't know. I'll have to ask. Tig Lily, if you're out there, did you wear your watch on your left or right
we should
hand?
Google that. That was the thing. Okay, here's PB. Patek Philippe said you should care for your watch to pass on to your son. That's my motto. Then it's more special to your offspring. That's the
Well,
watch
here
Dad
you know
wore.
here was the situation. I mean, this was a tough one for me. Sharon's father had a Breitling 806. Now, that may not mean much to some people, but the Breitling 806 was the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association Navitimer. It was a gold with a black face and ivory hands, kind of like a reverse panda. And Sharon's mom had it packed away after her dad died, and I kind of became the custodian of it. And I loved it, but I also felt that it belonged in John, who was her brother, her dad's son's hands. So I
Mhm.
cleaned it up, polished it, serviced it, and gave it to him. And I'll tell you what, as hard as that was for me being a watch freak to hand that off, the
Yeah.
look on the face was amazing. But on the flip side of that, when my father died, he had an Accutron by Bulova, one of the ones that we were talking about, the tuning fork. And for some weird reason, at 13, it wasn't that big of a deal. So I actually gave that watch to his brother. And to this day, I'll ask my wife, I'll say, hey, can you call my uncle and see if he'll give me that watch back?
Well, and you know, I'm so two parts. One, I'm all for handing stuff down, but I don't think it needs to be pristine, right? Because especially if you wore one watch a big chunk of your life, I would expect a little bit of, you know, life patina on there and stuff. But I also guess we kind of screwed this whole thing. Not that I have a son, but if you own a whole bunch of watches, there isn't this is the watch that my dad or my uncle or whoever wore,
Hmm.
and you're passing it down. It's like this is one of the 50 that he's got over there.
Well, but I think
Anyway,
that in itself, that tradition of, well, that's like when you used to retire, they'd give you the gold
did you?
watch.
Oh,
That doesn't happen anymore. I mean, they just give you a boot in the butt and say, have a nice life.
yeah. So Tig wears it on the right.
Oh,
Yeah,
see,
we
I
have
never,
to.
all these years, and I never knew that.
Yeah. So we're at an hour and 15. Just in case, tell them what happens again next week, Dave.
Just a reminder, next week, you will be watching the show at 6 p.m. Pacific on the Drinks and Dave's YouTube channel. We will not be broadcasting it on Barber Dave Shaves and Such or Nurse Dave Shaving World. We'll finally be on our own channel going live, and you will be able to interact with everybody, all the barflies. We're really excited about this because we've been hoping we were going to be able to do this very, very soon, and we're hoping that'll grow the channel as well. And our special guest will be Chad Vargo, and we're going to be talking all about refereeing. So football, basketball, stuff like that. So that'll be an
Again,
interesting.
Like we were excited to have Tim from Cigars Daily on,
Mm-hmm.
just the interesting stories and stuff. I don't know what Chad can share because he's in the business, but he's got some super interesting stories just about it's like behind the scenes stuff that you wouldn't think of. Or
And also, Dave and I want to remind everybody that's in the lounge that you guys are the co-hosts, so you help drive the content. So bring your.
I don't know. She turned French there or something.
Apparently, yes. It was the left wrist. But so you guys help. So bring all your questions for refereeing, good and bad, and and Chad is very open about that stuff. So I think that'll be kind of fun.
Yeah.
Any other questions about watches that anybody wants to throw out?
PB, step back and say, gentlemen are a wonderful outlet for letting us discuss our favorite hobbies. Can't wait for your Drinks and Dave's channel next week. Thank you, PB.
Thank you, BB.
And
We
you know
appreciate
what?
that.
And a shout out to thank you for all, especially those that join us live. I mean, that's what makes it exciting. Dave and I can sit here and talk to each other, but he gets on my nerves at times. So it's nice to have a distraction. And it's the members that allow us to switch over to Drinks and Dave. So
yeah, exactly.
Totally appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about
buddy.
it, don't you say?
Now, am I going to call you out and catch you unawares if I remind you we had outro music?
We do have outro music?
All right, never mind.
Yes, we do. We do. So anyhow, just want to say goodnight to everybody. Say goodnight, Dave.
Night, Dave.
Thanks, everybody, for being here. We'll see you again next week. Remember, Drinks and Dave's on that channel, 6 p.m. Pacific. We'll see you then. Take care, everybody.
Night.